Ohm's Advaitic Songs, which came out in 2012, Electric Moon's Freak Valley live album, which came out in 2020, and we're going to be looking at Wardruna's new album, Kvitravn, which came out in 2021. So, Floyd, take it away. What did you think of Advaitic Songs?
I have to say, I've been yawning all day. I think it's because these albums are so chill that I'm just permanently zen now. No, Advaitic Songs, I really liked it. They're on quite a new band to me, a band I've always heard of, and I knew that it's got owl. How do you pronounce this?
Cisneros. It means swans.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's cool.
Swan handler, I think. Yeah.
So no, he's kind of like the driving force behind this project, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I just thought it was just such a cool vibe. I love delving into the lyrical content as well. There's so much of it. I mean, it seems to draw from quite a few different tenets of religion, from what I've gathered.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know there's like obviously I know it's heavily influenced by like Hinduism, and I think even the Advaitic. You'll know a lot more about this than I do, but I was doing a bit of research, and Advaitic is the belief that the spirit is kind of like the one truth, or like the spirit is the main force.
So from what I gather, it's like the belief of non-duality, and that basically like the material world is kind of like not important.
Yeah.
That I have written it down. It's like it's a reference to the meaning of Om itself, which is the idea that Brahman alone is real, and that's like the universe, like the cosmic fabric of things. So that's kind of what the album's about, but I'll go into that when I do my big old monologue.
Well, I've done like a little track by track breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, it's always good to hear something where the guitars are not so prevalent, because so much in heavy music, we're just so used to being the guitar being the driving force, and I think there's just the bass in this album is just unreal. One track in particular had like one of the best bass lines I've ever heard. I think it was Gethsemane. Gethsemane.
That's it, yeah.
And about 8 minutes in, it was just like, I think it's one of it was such a good build up, because it was a very drum heavy track, that one. It was quite like, had a good atmosphere and stuff, and just, it's because sometimes I feel like a lot of sort of stoner or doom or whatever you want to call it music, there's not too much of a payoff a lot of the time. Like some of the songs tend to be quite gradual, and they swell a little bit, and then they kind of ease back down again. But what I liked about this track in particular, Gethsemane, was when the bass line just kicks in, it just kind of wakes you up a bit, and I was just like, holy shit, like this is some cool shit. Because as a whole, the album's actually not like, I wouldn't say it's terribly heavy, it's quite atmospheric a lot of the time, but you say this is one of their heavier albums as well, right? Or
I feel like this one and Pilgrimage is probably two of the heavier albums. But like the thing with Om is I feel like the heaviness is like, it's not a distortion thing, it's kind of like the sense that you get when you listen to it.
Yeah, but it's it's just great. The opening track I thought was real cool, had that real Middle Eastern vibe to it, and looks like it was apparently Kate Ramsey was providing the vocals for the mantra, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing I was doing a bit of research on the mantra. It seemed like it was to do with sort of death and reincarnation.
Yeah, it's a death. It's like asking for protection from death, and asking to like be preserved forever, basically. It's reaching out to Shiva, or I think Raman. I can't remember the name of the other god, but in Shivaism, it's like that's who you'd be addressing. Yeah, the three-eyed one.
Yeah, but I think we were just saying before we were recording as well. I think actually, even though this is like my first foray into any of their music, I actually already much prefer them to Sleep. I don't know, there's something about it that I think just resonates with me a bit more. I feel like Sleep's music is quite, it's a great sort of background album or background music you listen to when you kind of like vibe out and jam out. But this has similar elements to that, but I feel like it's much deeper.
Yeah, definitely. And
you can actually, like, the music kind of takes you on more of a journey. Like, I can sit and listen to this and be entertained thoroughly, whereas like, Dope Smoker, it's a bit fucking challenging at times to try and sit through that when you're doing nothing else.
That's like a piece of classical music, I'd say, Dope Smoker. I know what you mean. I think that Om is way more substance. I mean, look at the lyrics from The Sciences, which is a great album, but the lyrics are literally like back patch. Tina is my refuge. Like,
what's it again? Is it what's the...
Oh, the one for the puns, like the CBDC.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fucking funny.
But just good, and I think what I really liked about this album is the use of strings and stuff as well. There's quite a lot of orchestral elements. Like it definitely did sound like an orchestra a lot of the time.
There's tabla as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Indian drums and things.
Yeah,
like
because I think that was on one of the tracks. I think actually, it was. I think it was the last track. So Hakao Yakin.
Hakao Yakin, yeah.
Oh, which is what the truth of certainty, which I've got written down here. But yeah, that sounded like that was a tabla that was being played at the beginning of that track, and it's cool because from what I've gathered from the lyrical content is they're drawn from a lot of different aspects of sort of religion and mythology, but at the same time you can hear the different flares in the music as well. There's aspects of the music that's reflective of these different sort of tenets of religion that I thought was really cool.
Yeah, there is actually an overarching narrative, I think, but you've got to do a shit ton of Wikipedia reading.
Yeah. Which
I will have a whole section of this podcast where I'm going to go on a little mini Ohm rant, but I'm going to let you have your say before I do it.
I think the last thing I kind of want to say about this album is it's an interesting thing I've been thinking about, and it's with this sort of music, and a lot of people have said that this is the sort of music where you need to be under the influence of something to truly appreciate. And I was kind of pondering whether or not that is true or not.
I would say it's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't partake, but I still thoroughly enjoy this kind of music. And I think if anything, I find it easier to enjoy it without having to do so, because people, different strokes for different folks, basically.
Yeah. And it's just I'm of the same belief really, because I think it just depends on who you are as a person. I think some people just need that little extra encouragement to kind of lose their inhibitions a bit and kind of experience the music for what it is. But I felt like it's like I was saying last week, I do need to be in a certain mood to enjoy the sort of music. Like if I'm in the mood for something a bit more sort of fast paced, then it's not going to hit the spot. But I had to wait for the right time to listen to this album, I felt like. So I was feeling just a bit chilled in the evening. I was like, I'm just going to sit down and jam it out now. Felt like I couldn't really take it in if it was playing in the background on the bus or anything, or out and about.
Personally, I can listen to this album anytime, but that is because it's one of my favourite albums. I'm not the same with any of other Ohm's albums. This one in particular hits me in a very particular way, because I think it's their most recent album, which is a shame because they are fucking incredible, and I hope Al has a sober moment, or maybe a non-sober moment, to write some more Ohm, because they really did grow into themselves, I think, in this album, with their previous discography, because it's heavy, it's beautiful, it's amazing, but this whole album is just so beautiful. The way they've constructed it, the way the production, everything is just gorgeous. Yeah.
It's I really like the drums as well. I think he's such I was saying this.
Emil Amos.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing.
It's just so good. I like his fills. I like drummers that aren't overly flashy. Yeah. And I feel like, I like when they have a good use of fills as well. And there's so many times, he's using a lot of the sort of the ride cymbal, which is cool, because I think it just matches so well to that sort of style of music. But it's just, he's just interspersing so much of the track with these fills that aren't, they're not detracting from the music.
Absolutely.
They're still adding to the atmosphere, and it's even there's one part that I thought was really cool. Which track was it again? It was Gethsemane again. There was one point where it felt like the vocals and the bass were kind of bouncing off each other.
They're both rhythmic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Al uses his vocals super rhythmically.
Yeah. That makes sense, because it just sounded like they were almost dueling or even talking to each other. And I noticed that the vocals, they're not a primary, a focal point of the album whatsoever. There's some, you've got a bit of chanting in the last track, which is quite cool. I think quite good sort of tantric way to finish the album. And the last track had a real sort of tantric feel to it. It was really quite, just kind of awe-inspiring, really. But yeah, I totally like the whole rhythmic thing with the vocals. It makes sense, because a lot of the time you can tell he's just almost narrating a lot of the time. It's not even vocals per se. It's just an accompaniment to the music that's being played. It's
kind of religious. It's kind of like how a monk would have a mantra or something like that. He's kind of it's kind of coming out of him, but it's almost like he's not fully aware it's happening. Yeah. At the same time. Yeah.
But it was great. It's one of those. It's tough, because I felt like this is something I wish I discovered a long time ago. So like I've listened to the album like twice, so I felt like I barely had time to really digest it. And it's something that kind of seeps into your consciousness the more you listen to it. So it's like, as much as I did really enjoy it, and I actually think it is a great album, and it's kind of opened my eyes to sort of what I've been missing. But I just feel I need more time with it, just to get into it a bit more.
It's a deep as fuck album. Like, it takes years to sink in, because like when I came back to this and probably read it, because I wrote an essay on this when I was at uni, like years ago now, and like I read it again and I was like, oh, I have a complete different take on it now, and like I can see so much more in the music that I didn't the first time around, so it's really cool that it can grow if you like that.
Yeah, it was great, but I'd love to hear what your take on it is. So I know you've got a lot to say about it.
Before I go into the rambling monologue, I will say also that Al has a really unique way of playing bass.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw any of the music videos, but when Al plays the bass, he plays on the neck. He doesn't play, so he always plays a Rickenbacker, and he always has the pick guard as well. He's actually got his own custom one now. It's beautiful. But yeah, he'll play on the neck, and he'll kind of like tap, and the way he plays is super rhythmic, and the way he sings is super rhythmic, and like there are tracks on I think on Pilgrimage where they're called the Cremation Gats, and it's just drums, it's just rhythm, like really intense rhythms. People love them. Yeah. When they play live as well, I 100% recommend, if you can catch them playing live, go and see them, because they are playing shows when things open up. They're scheduled to play in late May in London and Bristol and other places, but hopefully they'll be happening this year, if not next year. But yeah, the monologue, if you don't care about this, fast forward to the next one, which will be Electric Moon. But in the meantime, welcome to my small lecture on Ohm's Advaitic Songs. So, as you said earlier, Advaitic is a reference to non-duality. It's the meaning of Ohm itself, which is what the band is named after. The Ohm is like kind of a reference to like infinite, the nature of the universe, like the kind of unity of God. And I think I'm doing something really interesting, because a lot of metal is about duality. It's about good and evil, Satan and God, things like that. But this whole album is actually about the complete opposite. It's about, my take in a nutshell is that this whole album is a journey of the soul through reincarnation until finally you get to, which in Hinduism is like the idea, or in Buddhism, the idea of like nirvana, where you can finally escape from like what is seen to be like the chains of the physical world. And your soul finally goes on to a different realm, and you've reached a level of enlightenment and certainty where you don't have to be chained to like the physical realms anymore. And like he's doing that using not only like Judaism, like Kabbalah, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, like all these different things, he's using them all at the same time to kind of mean different things. And he's also referring to like history and stuff too. So Addis is like, the capital of Ethiopia is Addis Ababa. It also means, I think, red earth. Adam was made of clay. And then when people recite this particular chant at the beginning, which is to Shiva, it's got a name. It's called the Mahamrityunjaya, or the Triambakam mantra. So it's from the Rig Veda, and it's to Rudra or Shiva. And this is like considered the oldest living religion in the world. So it's ancient as fuck, it is old. So the mantra is called the death conquering mantra, and I think what Al is doing here is that he's not talking about like being immortal in a physical way, but conquering death, and that you don't have to be reincarnated. Because you've reached a level of enlightenment where you don't have to be alive anymore. So like that's super interesting to me. So that's the state of non-return, right? So he's talking about, I don't know if I should read all the lyrics because you guys would get really bored, but his lyrics are also super weird too, because he basically does stream of consciousness. So for example, in Ohm, he is like, traveller, now reach the stream, the astral flight adapter. From the pain sheaf, life ascends, the non-returner sees. Empathy release me, and the phoenix rise triumphant, and walks onto the certitude ground, the soul's submergence ends. So he's literally talking about like the pain sheaf is the body, right? Or it can be the womb as well. So it's about like birth, death, and like how you perceive the world, and like reaching the certitude ground. And this is also a reference to Haq al-Yaqeen, which is like, in Islam, you have different levels of knowledge and certainty.
And that's the third stage, isn't it?
That's the last one before you kind of reach, like, you know, the knowledge of certainty. The first three is, I think the first one is, like, knowledge, understanding of understanding of knowledge. And then you've got, for fuck's sake, I've got to read my notes. I've got so many notes, guys. You've got three different ones. So there's the stages of certainty, the knowledge, the eye of certainty, and the truth of certainty. So the eye here, there's like loads of references to eyes in this. So he's already like referring to all these different things in the songs that link to each other. So he literally says, from the rounds of rebirth, he arrives onto the deathless. So that's like him, he's going out from reincarnation. Light bores into the adjunct worlds, the soul galleon prevails, which is like super Lord of the Ringsy in a way. So yeah, like I really fucking love this. This is so different to a lot of like normal Western metal, and it's not appropriative. Like Al Cisneros isn't doing this to be like, oh, I'm so bohemian and fashionable, let's go and find ourselves in India. He's like, he's actually legit into this shit because he's done so much fucking research. And Gethsemane is the garden where Judas kissed Jesus and betrayed him. Yeah. So that's what Gethsemane is about. It's like another death, which is really interesting. And he refers to Nicodemus, who was one of the Sanhedrin, which is like a Jewish priest, that attended to Jesus' body. Yeah. So he sits in vigil weeping, which is a reference to like the Jewish death ritual, where people will basically sit with the body for 7 days, because there's the idea that the soul hovers above the body. Yeah. And you're basically making sure nothing comes and fucks with the soul, or fucks with the body. So like that's, in Nicodemus is weeping in vigil, and then the Arahat rises, which is like, Arahat is like, I think it's someone who's studying, someone who's like about to reach enlightenment. Yeah. So they're not quite at like the level, and I think this is a Hindu thing. So like the healing ghost descends, which is a Christian thing, and then lamentation cease, enter rarefied light prevails, Devakut gleams, sing freedom from Tomasic field. So Devakut is Jewish. That is a reference to like the kind of like incredible feeling of euphoria you get through praying. Yeah. That's Devakut. And then Tomasic field, that's a reference to in Hinduism to darkness. So like in like 3 sentences, he's referring to like all these world religions, and he's making them work. I
suppose that helps it kind of not be appropriative when he's including so much from so many different.
In a way, I suppose. I think it depends how you do it, because I think you could be, in theory, if it was like some kind of gimmick where you're just like being a tourist for all these different things. But I think he's kind of trying to make a point about like the non-dualities of religion and how there is like a unity throughout all these ancient practices that all speak to each other, and there's clearly, I think he's kind of doing that. He also is making references to like, I think potentially to like some modern poetic ideas. Like I don't know if he's read Blake, but Blake has a poem called All Religions Are One, and he does similar things. Yeah. And this is from like the 1800s, but I feel like Cisneros would be super into that shit. I really would love to ask him this stuff, because he could just be like, Nina, you're full of shit. What are you doing? I just smoked some weed. And I just like did random article on Wikipedia. Yeah. It could be that, but I have a feeling he's done his research, because like this is like super, you know, specific stuff. Ezekiel Saw the Wheel is literally the coolest shit ever, because I remember that was the first thing I googled when I read this. Did you look up Ezekiel's wheel?
Well, is this when God appears to him in a chariot?
Yeah, the chariot's got like eyes and shit.
Yeah, that sounded really fucking cool.
It's so fucking cool. A lot of people think this is a reference to UFOs and ancient aliens.
I can see why they would think that, but yeah.
Because there's loads of like rings, and all the rings are lined with eyes, and inside these levels of rings are like weird animals and shit. Yeah. And like there's a chariot appearing to, I can't fucking remember who sees the chariot. Ezekiel sees the chariot. Prana exits, that's breath, which is also related to the spirit, the Holy Spirit in Christianity, because breath and spirit and creation are all linked in like all the religions. It's really interesting. Fucking look it up if you're interested. Vritiless path, if you're wondering, Vritti means whirlpool in Hindu. That's like a reference to like stuff stopping you from reaching enlightenment. So at this point, basically Nicodemus is is becoming enlightened, whilst the soul of Jesus is kind of like moving on to like the next thing, which is interesting because in the very next song, which is called Sinai, which is where Moses receives the laws from God.
The Ten Commandments and stuff, right?
Nicodemus is a Sanhedrin, which is a rabbinic priest. Well, not rabbinic, he's a priest. The rabbinic stuff I don't think existed at this point, but he is the father of rabbinic stuff. So like Moses is the first dude to have law in the Bible.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that in the previous song you've got a dude who's like in the courts, who is a law guy, and then in Sinai he doesn't talk about Moses, he talks about Melchizedek and Menelik. And Menelik is one of the emperors that made Ethiopia, which is where Addis Ababa is, the capital of Ethiopia. So there's a text. I wrote down the name of the text if anyone's actually vaguely interested. And in this text there is a guy. It's called the Kebra Nagast, and it's full of Ethiopian folklore which comes from ancient Egypt. It's Arab, it's Coptic, there's stuff from rabbinic literature, and the Old Testament is from the 6th century. And the author uses this collection of tales to basically big up the Ethiopian royalty, but he has this idea that there's like a pearl that came from Adam, which is like the red earth, in reference, like in the name of Addis. And that pearl like passed through like Jesus and Moses and all these holy people, and like eventually ended up in the royalty of Ethiopia, like Menelik.
Yeah.
So like there's this weird like reincarnation thing in like, I don't know if it's that deep, but it's there. So there's that. And then Melchizedek is also that's Hebrew, I think, for like the priest of forever, the king of forever. It's like a really like bigging up kind of title. So the shrine, like you've gone up to the vigil on the mountain of Gethsemane, and then Sinai you're going down. You're coming down from the peaks. You're kind of being like, you're going back into your body again. This is like another round of incarnation. So you're becoming more and more knowledgeable. You're becoming more and more enlightened until you get to Hakal Yakin, which is like the final stage. Yeah. Before you're finally like fucking zooming off into the cosmic universe, no longer having to worry about your soul galleon and your pain sheath. And in this one, he basically goes fucking crazy. This is like the longest song lyrically, and he starts referencing like hard on he starts hardcore referencing Kabbalah and shit in this, like right from the beginning. So he's talking about the blue orb on the spine's horizon, that's your brain. If you're into Kabbalah, you will know that there's like have you seen the Sephirot? Do you know? No. It's this weird fucking kind of graph with all this is in Judaism, in Jewish mysticism. You're not really supposed to hardcore go into this until you have like a level of knowledge. Yeah. Usually when people are 40 years old, after they've like spent their whole lives studying like Midrash and stuff, they start reading about Kabbalah. But it's really fucking interesting. And there's like this idea that there are like 600 names for God, basically. And there's this kind of like structure where you have different names for different aspects of God. And then all of these have different meanings. So you have like the femininity of God, you've got like kingship, you've got mercy, you've got loving kindness, you've got all these different things that all have different names, and they all mean loads of different things. And there's like thousands of pages written on all this stuff. But I believe that Cisneros is referring to it. He literally uses the names of one of them as well. And he's talking basically about the body just fucking dying and the soul just shooting out of the body. And you're going through all these different stages of like certainty. He talks about the 8th stage of absorption. He talks about the 7th shrine. He's referring to like not only the Kabbalah, he's also referring to, because in Islam you actually have more than the 3 stages of certainty. You've actually got, I think there's 8 or 7 in total.
Okay, yeah.
I have written it down. I'm not going to read everything I've written because you guys would be bored to fucking death. But if anyone is interested, just look me up, hit me up, and I'll talk to you about it. There's 7 levels of knowledge, and there's 3 levels of certainty. So before certainty, you've got to go through the 7 levels of knowledge. So I believe he's talking to this, and he talks about the traveller, and the name of the person who is navigating these is called a traveller. Yeah. So like I think it's pretty clear he's doing this, and like the it's referred to as like a journey of return to the source, which is exactly like super Hindu. It's super everything in this. And he talks about like the mendicant and the fakir, which is like basically someone who's a beggar, and a fakir is like a holy person who's a beggar. So you're like traveling the roads, you are putting yourself in like a situation where you're intentionally like, you know, in like religion, if you're putting yourself in that situation, you're super devoted to God, right? Yeah. So you're reaching those stages of knowledge. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he talks about emerging from triune sheaths, which is the idea of God being like the Trinity, like the Holy Ghost, etc., Jesus and God. So you're emerging from that, and you approach the sovereign ground. From the karmic tombs awaken. Through inner space it sees Shekinah, which is a reference to like a very direct reference to the Sephirot. And Shekinah means dwelling place. It's also in Islam. You have the Sukinah.
Yeah.
And like that's reference to Malkut, which is like the highest level of Sephirot, which is like the highest level of understanding. And like you're ascending to Shekinah, and then the Phoenix has ascended, glides down upon the divine wing, and liberates from God's sojourn. So you're waking up from the dream of the physical world, and you have become enlightened, and you are certain, and you're in this like fucking cool cosmic space. I'm pretty sure Al did some DMT or something. I feel this is like some crazy DMT trip where he's seeing like Ezekiel's wheel, and he's going through like the fucking cosmic religious history of the world through like all the lives of these prophets being incarnated over and over again until you reach a point where you've become like, you've gone from a king to a beggar, and you're just,
I think it's super cool, personally.
It's fucking sick, right? There's like so much
Deep
more.
as hell.
There's so much more. I didn't want to say everything, but there is some really, really interesting stuff. And like, if you just read some lyrics and just like look up a random word or look up a random line, and even a line that isn't like a word that's weird, it will be in reference to something. Like every part of this has been really like thought about and picked and pruned and curated in like a really beautiful way, which is so funny because if you read the lyrics of the most recent Sleep album, that's not the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I love Al, and like Al is definitely one of the reasons that I play music, because I have seen him play live several times and it's fucking inspiring. Every single time I come away like more dedicated to being a musician from having seen him.
Have you seen On play live before?
Several times.
Yeah.
Incredible. Absolutely amazing. Just watching him play, it's funny because he's not a very confident singer.
Yeah.
So live he kind of just mumbles.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's stoned out of his fucking mind when he plays live. I think that's the only way he can play. And I've seen Sleep several times. The first time I saw him play was in Sleep, and I was on stage because I don't know if I should say this on camera, but me and my friend pretended that we were Sleep's official photographers to Sleep backstage at a festival so that we could actually photograph them and like be on stage with them. And like they were like, yeah, sure, go on in. So I was on stage and there was no one else there, and they were loading in, and Matt Pike and Al were there, and we were just like, hey. And Al has a green Granny Smith apple that he's hollowed out into a bong.
Oh,
and
no,
he's just standing in the corner, like just like gurgling into this apple.
Wait, what is the benefit of an apple bomb?
It's flavoured.
Oh, of course,
It makes it super flavoured. So apparently bananas and melons are really good for this. But yeah, he just took a few hits from his apple before going on stage and playing a fucking amazing set.
God, I'd love to see him live. You heard about the set they played in Jerusalem, right?
Of course, the 6-hour set.
Yeah, that's mad.
I wish I could have been there.
That sounds like some next level spiritual experience.
It would 100% have been spiritual as hell, because they are honestly transcendental live. Like one of my favourite live bands, hands down. I've seen a lot of bands.
I'm gonna have to, fingers crossed, everything returns to normal at some point, or some semblance of normality, because I'd love to see them live. I think that'd be great. I was reading that at the end of the 5-hour gig or 6-hour gig, however long it was, just whoever stuck around, they just went out and just hugged everybody.
Oh, well, the first time I saw them, they played the Scala, and Emil Amos stayed behind the set, and me and him, he was like, oh hey, I've got some whiskey, and we got to fly, so do you want to sit and just have some whiskey? And we just sat together and had a drink, and then he signed his drumstick for me, and he tried to get Al to sign it, but Al was just like, you know, but he like even ran backstage just to get that, which he didn't have to do. You know, and like it was just so sweet. He's such a cool guy. They're all really really lovely. Emo Amos goes on Duncan Trussell a lot, so he has some really interesting podcast things on there.
I think it's always quite kind of heartwarming when you see that people that spend a large chunk of their life touring still take the time and effort to be nice and kind of personable towards people, because to be honest, you would totally give them the benefit of the doubt, or excuse them for acting like dickheads half the time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if I was flying across the world, I'd be pretty pissed off too, and grumpy and miserable.
Exactly.
But no, I think it's always quite heartwarming when you see musicians actually being,
They are wholesome as hell, and there's no way they're gonna hit on you as well.
Yeah.
Like there's no weird Nazi Me Too action happening in Owen. You just know they're fucking cool guys.
It's always a plus.
It's always a plus. It's a bonus. I do it for that. Apparently, Al is like a chess grandmaster.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I don't know if he gives lessons, but I heard that he's like just incredibly good at chess. And that's legit. Yeah.
I played the chess a bit when I was younger, but it's just I enjoyed chess, but it was just it's just too cerebral for me.
I can play Magic the Gathering, but I can't play chess.
Oh. It's funny. I don't know why, and it's like I spoke to a few other people who've been recommended this video, but like the YouTube algorithm is so fucked. I got recommended this video with some I think his name's Magnus Carlsen, some like 30-year-old chess dude who's apparently like a bit of a prodigy, and it was a video of him having to leave the chess match halfway through because he had diarrhea. And I'm like, why have I been recommended this? But at the same time, it's cool. I now know why Magnus Carlsen couldn't finish his chess match.
I think it's because you watch videos of dogs throwing up.
That's probably it, yeah.
That's probably it, because you love people throwing up.
That's a great video.
It's such a good video. It's pretty funny. Yeah. Well, what would you rate this album?
Oh, I don't think I can. I think I need another couple of years with this album to even formulate a true opinion.
Fair.
Because I will say, and it's what's unusual is normally albums like that don't get me first time round. I think it takes a while for it to kind of seep in. But I think there is actually kind of instant appeal with this album that I think kind of makes it special, because I listened to it for the first time. I was like, I really dig this, but I know I'm going to dig it so much more in like 20 years' time when I've listened to it for like the 100th time. So, but it's great. I love it.
Sick. I recommend, if you want to listen to more Iron, maybe after this, listening to Pilgrimage, and then maybe God is Good, and then Conference of the Birds, Give Up Our Cow after that.
But so it sounds like, because this is their newest release, right?
2012, but
2012, 9 years ago. Can you believe that?
I think I got distracted by sleep performing.
Yeah. Just fair enough. I mean, when you look at how much money they're probably getting paid to play those festivals, you can't turn that down.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, for me, this is a 10, 100%. It's a 10. Yeah. It's one of those albums that was a turning point in my life, for sure. Yeah. It's
just crazy. I mean, it's kind of opened my eyes a bit, because really, and I don't really want to put a genre on it, because I think it kind of defies genre. It's a very transcendental album, it's because I feel like anybody, even lovers of non-heavy music, who appreciate this. Like I was going to say, I'm going to show it to my mum, because I know that she's going to fucking absolutely love it as well. But it's, like I was saying before, a lot of the time I've got to be in the right mood, but with this I was just able to just jam it instantly, and I loved it.
Awesome. That makes me so happy. I'm really glad that you like it. I'd be really sad if you didn't.
It's boring. There's no breakdowns.
It's all about religion. So the next album is Electric Moon, live at Freak Valley 2019. So this is one of the last shows before everything broke.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that the last gigs were kind of... I went to a gig in last year in 2020.
My last gig was 2020. We played with Dev.
Oh, it was you playing it, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was my last gig.
My last one was Batushka, but the real Batushka.
Yeah, of course.
Who, ironically, the real Batushka are the ones who aren't signed to Metal Blade Records.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's a story for another time.
We should form a band called The Real Batushka.
Yeah. It's the best thing about them is that there's about 20 different Batushkas now.
It's like a Russian doll kind of.
Yeah. There's like an anime one which has got like it's just, I have to show it to you afterwards. I can't remember what the album's called.
They should do merch that's like a love pillow.
Probably some weeaboo shit going on there, but this album, Electric Moon, it was great, and I listened to the recording of it which has been mixed and mastered, and it sounds absolutely fantastic for a live record.
Yeah.
And I also, after I finished that, I actually went and watched the live set as well.
I did the same thing.
Just to get an idea, because I liked, because the thing is, when I'm not a massive, big fan of live records per se, normally, because I'd rather watch a live performance, even if it's recorded, as opposed to listen to it, because I feel like that's such a key aspect of live music is the visual and what's being presented on stage as well. But I will say that it was, and I've got the guy's name who mixed and mastered it, because he done an absolutely fantastic job.
I read his name and I forgot what his name is. It's a good name.
It was a good name. It was Falco Schneider.
That's it, Falco Schneider.
And he's for the Institute. He works for the Institute for Angewandten Krak, which I think is the Institute for Applied Noise.
I don't know, but I think I can't say it on shit. No, forget what I'm about to say. I can't say it on camera. But
done a great job, and I have to say, what a sound for like a 3-piece. Like the sort of the music they generated on stage was great.
So rich for 3 people playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like my dad's a massive Hawkwind fan. So like, and like his favourite Hawkwind album was Quark's Strangeness and Charms, which has got, and you know, it's a very retro thing, you know, the effects and the delays and stuff. I think it's quite, you know, like Pink Floyd, you know, we're doing a lot of that as well. But it's good to hear a relatively new band, because I think they formed in 2009, so which is still relatively new by today's standards. And it's good to, I always like hearing sort of old techniques kind of brought into a more modern kind of soundscape, because obviously there's been so much developments in the audio recording and stuff. Some people will say for better, for worse. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that still will say that, you know, digital recording was the death of the music industry, but it's just good to hear kind of like the retro sounds amalgamated into kind of like a more of a modern package and kind of presented in a live setting. And I think it's just I thought it was great. I mean, I enjoyed it personally.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can tell they're using like really, they care about their gear, like the pedals they're using, the amps they're using, everything sounds so warm. It sounds like sunlight.
Yeah.
It's really atmospheric. It's really like, it's the bands in the vein of like, you know, Color Haze and Yuri Gagarin and like really just good instrumental. Well, Color Haze isn't purely instrumental, but you know what I mean. It's that kind of like German sound, the krautrock sound. Really just complex but simple, easy to listen to. You can listen to them or you can just put them on and do whatever you like, and you can just feel it warming your soul. It's that kind of music. Yeah,
it's what I thought was cool as well, is because when I was looking at the track listing for the recorded and mastered version, they had the name of the first track was called Increase, but then I found out upon watching the live set that it was actually just one long, massive improv.
The first 2 tracks are like that. Yeah, there's 777 as well.
Yeah.
And like on the live, there's also, it's like they're both 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
So they're obviously just jamming out, having a good time. I love when bands do that. It's like, you know, you're getting something unique from that performance.
Yeah. I think that probably makes sense why it's released as a live album, you know, because it was a unique experience. Like, you know, because a lot of time a live album is just a compilation of songs from, you know, just one part from an entire entity that has its own kind of sound, whereas this does seem like a bit of a unique experience and performance that was kind of amalgamated into an actual release, and I think I think it works really well. I love just the guitar and the bass work. I've noticed that a lot of the times while playing, the bassist would change her just techniques, you know, on the same song, like she'd be plucking at some points and then, you know, strumming at others, and if it's just really, it's that sort of attention to detail that I think really adds to like the soundscape that they create. And obviously the guitarist half the time is by his pedals, you know, and doing all the effects and stuff, and I thought it was just really cool. It was just a real, I tried to listen to it just all the way through, because like you said, it's kind of more like a jam than anything, because you know, trying to like separate it and rate it track by track, just didn't really think it was even that probable with this album.
Yeah.
Even though obviously I think there was a track towards the end which is called the
bonus track?
It was D-Tune. Yeah, there's an acoustic track right at the end which is only a couple minutes long. Yeah. I thought that just kind of serves like an outro more than anything. Like it was nice. Yeah. But I think the last actual track was called D-Tune, and that track alone was quite shorter, and it had a bit more of like a post-rock vibe to it. Like it was, you know, the guitars were quite soaring and melodic.
Yeah.
But no, overall I thought it was great, and it wasn't boring a lot of that time. When you look at an album and there's 2 20-minute tracks, you're thinking this is either going to be really good or I'm going to be bored out of my mind. But I think having the live setting just works as well, because you could tell they were feeding off the energy of the crowd and stuff. And I have to say, the Freak Valley Festival looks like a really good festival.
It's really legit. I really want to go at some point.
Yeah.
They do overplayed.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they put on some really good lineups.
Yeah, because the lineup I looked at, I think it was the year they played, which was 2019, which is what this album's taken from. I think it was Corrosion of Conformity were headlining. Yob were there, who I know we all love Yob.
Everyone loves Yob.
Yeah. And it's just, just fingers crossed festivals can return, because it's definitely something I'd be down for going to at some point.
It's nice to hear, I never cared about live albums, but it's nice to hear a crowd. It's just so nice to hear people screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to remember what it's like. At this point, it's kind of like a kind of weird fantasy to think about. So to hear it was kind of tantalizing and strange, because I never listened to live music, but this made me listen to it, and I was like, oh my god, I miss that so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know about you guys. I've actually had dreams of being at gigs.
I've had dreams of being at festivals.
Yeah, and it's just so weird, because it seems, like you said, it just seems like a lifetime ago. So it's just like when I'm there in the dream, it's like shit, this is what I miss in life. And it's so annoying, because we all live near and around London, and London is just so fucking spoilt for choice for gigs.
It is.
And just took it so much for granted when they were going on. There'd be a band who I really love, but oh fuck it, I'll catch them next year.
Yeah.
When I'm feeling a bit more up for it. But now I'm just shit. I should definitely going to take every opportunity to watch as much live music as possible.
My biggest regret is I had a ticket for Electric Wizard. And I just felt really anxious that day. I didn't feel like going out, so I just kind of stayed in. I cancelled on myself, and then the pandemic happened, and I was like, I miss Electric Wizard the most.
Yeah.
I think I miss Ohm the most, but they rarely play. But I need to see Electric Wizard again, and I have a feeling. I've been listening to the Damnation podcast, but listen to ours more. But basically they were saying there's probably going to be lots of best of British lineups. There's going to be a lot of Carcass and Electric Wizard lineups, because we're not going to import
fine by
for
me.
a while. Yeah, I was like, hell yeah, I love those bands.
Akakocka, Electric Wizard.
Coroner, they're English, right? Because they were the Coroner. They played Gods of the Land. I mean, that would be they're not English.
They're Swiss.
Oh
my god, they are. Oh, Coroner. That's really upsetting. I wish they should be English. Coroner should be English. Make them English, please.
Make Coroner English again.
Make them English. I want Coroner to be English. It just sounds like an English name.
Yeah. To be honest though, I think I was saying this in one of the weeks, but it's crazy when you actually sit and think how much of heavy music, or just music in general, that this small island has spawned.
It is mental, isn't it?
Even in the metal scene alone, Carcass alone have spawned 4 different fucking subgenres. But
there are converge.
Sabbath, Sabbath, Judas Priest. I mean, it's just Napalm Death. So I think I'm definitely down for British centric festivals. I mean, we've definitely got enough wealth of talent to put on some pretty decent shows.
I'm up for it. Does England have any, the UK, does that have any good black metal? I'm drawing a blank.
Good question. I mean...
It's death, really. I don't know.
Well, it's got pretty good... There's quite a lot of good OSDM bands from the UK, old school death metal. That's the big revival thing at the moment. I think
that's what we've got them.
Grave Miasma and stuff. Yeah. Black metal? Yeah, there's pretty good stuff.
Ones that aren't racist.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to work out.
Because that's my problem. Literally right now, I'm drawing so many...
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I think I'd like to do at some point in the future, even just do a spotlight on a subgenre, just take a few bands and just focus on some of the stuff that's happening on our own fucked up little island.
Maybe we should do a safety black metal corner, where we'll be this band's definitely safe.
I mean, one of my favourite... British is a bit of a tenuous description for this band, but I really love Primordial.
I love Primordial.
And they're just great, I mean, there's such good music, and, I think they've actually done a lot for the kind of the black/folk genre.
They're on a lot of good lineups. I really like Alan's just miserable in real life, but I do love his vocals. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard this podcast is a bit nihilistic.
It's a bit of a downer.
Everything's fucked. But Primordial, I saw them live, luckily, not long before all this shit went down. They played Damnation in 2019.
They're a good Damnation band, yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Except everybody was circle pitting for them. I was thinking, who the fuck circle pits to Primordial?
That's so strange.
Yeah, it was weird.
People started moshing to like the strangest bands before the pandemic. Like Sleep had a fucking pit.
How did they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
When I saw them in Roadburn, I think everybody was just too fucking high to even move off their spot, let alone start a pit. But back to Electric Moon.
Yeah.
What my favourite track on the album was a track called The Picture, which had quite a consistent riff kind of going through it. And I thought that's going to be one of these sort of psychedelic songs, that has like a the same motif and riff and structure kind of runs all the way through. It swells a little bit. But what I really liked about this track was kind of like about 15 minutes in, they take the riff, and I always love when bands do this. Like they just really slow the riff down. It's just so much more gnarlier.
Yeah, that's great.
It's just the best. Another good example of a band that done this fantastically was Decapitated at Bloodstock. One year I saw them and they're playing Spheres of Madness, which is like their one-to-one. And they took the fucking riff and just completely made it really fucking sludgy and slowed it down.
I love when they do a big nasty bend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love it when the band does that.
So good, and that's kind of what they've done on this track called The Picture, and it actually fades out. I'm thinking, this is coming to the end, but then it comes crashing back in and it gets heavier again. And I think, that's quite a good touch because you're so used to hearing bands kind of, the music swells up and then it just gradually fades out. But then they actually came back in again and went hard again for another couple of minutes. I just thought that was really cool. That's probably my favourite track of the album / live performance.
Yeah, I like that. I like it when bands mess around with your expectations live.
Yeah.
That's one of my favourite things, yeah.
And it's good, just keeps things exciting, because too many times you listen to metal that sounds like so homogenous, sounds like so many other bands from that particular subgenre or facet. And it's, I just want to hear something different. Like, I like things being mixed together and like sounding, and that's what I think one of the things I liked about the Electric Moon album as well is it had, in my opinion, what sounded like quite a lot of post-rock elements as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I thought that was just really cool. Reminds me of Mono again a bit, a band who I absolutely adore. And I think it's just, just adds to the whole soundscape aspect of the songs. And overall, it was good. I heavily enjoyed this live performance, despite being slightly apprehensive, because like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of live albums, but I think they understood that was going to be a preconception going forwards, and decided to take the effort to mix it and master it properly when releasing it.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. It should be noted they have about 9 live albums.
Yeah, because I was looking up their discography and it was it didn't actually state whether they were live or not. Well, on Wikipedia anyway.
On Bandcamp it does.
Oh, does it?
I was looking at Bandcamp and I was counting. They have, I think, double the amount of live albums than they do non-live. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please tell me. But I think that's what I took away from it.
But that's cool. Some bands are just like that. They're obviously a band that loves to jam and do their shit on stage, and and that's evident in the performance. You hear it and it just sounds great. And I'll go and check out their recorded stuff and kind of form an opinion on that. But as it currently stands, this was a very strong first opinion, because I knew nothing about this band. I knew you were a little bit familiar with them, but I knew nothing, because this really is kind of not really my wheelhouse.
Yeah, they're one of the bands I listened to for a long time, like in the early 2010s. Like I still listen to them occasionally. I got really big into bands like Sungrazer, The Machine, that split. Sungrazer and The Machine, very good, check it out. Yuri Gagarin, Color Haze, who I think are kind of like, if you like this kind of music, I think we should definitely do a Color Haze album at some point, because they're a really interesting band, and I think they do something similar, but they kind of paint with colour with their music. It's like very intense, incredible live. They did like a 4-hour set.
Nice.
they do like XL sets.
Yeah.
And they play Duna Jam a lot as well. I mean, this is a Duna Jam band. And they'll often play like a 3-hour set at Duna Jam.
Yeah. I'd love to go there. That just sounds amazing. They're totally like a Roadburn band as well. I think they actually did play a set in Roadburn once, and I totally get that, because I think Roadburn actually started more of like a stoner sort of psych sort of band, sort of festival, and they've kind of branched out a bit.
Germany has so many bands like this. There's like a whole scene in Germany. I mean, krautrock in it.
Yeah.
So there's, I think, because of where Roadburn is, it must be so easy to just get them to come over and play. Yeah.
It's quite easy for us to get to Roadburn, to be fair. It was just, we've got the Eurostar straight there.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
When I went to the Desert Fest there, it was the same. Like I think there's just so many good bands like this in Europe. They're absolutely blessed, and there's not so many in England. I think we're too miserable. to make that kind of music.
Not sunny enough.
Yeah, not enough vitamin D. Yeah, I mean, I'd rate this album, I think, a solid 6.5.
Yeah, it's I don't know why my voice was so high pitched there. I was channeling Rob Halford. I'd be inclined to say about the same, maybe even a 7. I thought it was good.
Nice.
I really enjoyed it, and like I said, it's kind of this and the Om album. The Om album more has kind of inspired me to check out more of this vein. I try not to kind of categorize them too much because I'm kind of just, as you get older, I think you get a bit more fed up of trying to categorize shit.
Yeah.
It's so redundant a lot of the time, but definitely more music of a similar vein. Like I'm going to go and make a concerted effort to go and try and
I think they'd be on a lineup of similar bands. That's how I kind of think about music now. It's like, if it was a festival, they'd probably share a lineup. If it was like of a kind of genre that's going to appeal to people who like smoking weed, let's say. Yeah, I think that's a solid take. I think that's Electric Moon.
Yeah.
I think that leads us nicely onto Kvitravn, if I'm remembering the name right, by Wardruna. I believe it means white raven.
Yeah, white raven. And from what I've gathered is, because Wardruna are an interesting kind of project, because obviously they get lumped in with the metal sphere quite a lot because of their connections and stuff, like we were saying. Yeah. With Ina Selvik being involved with Gorgoroth, but it's they've really, I think, done a lot for kind of getting metalheads into kind of interested in traditional music. And it's as a similar vein, bands like Highling have done as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like I don't know about which band was formed first, but I felt like Wardruna would want.
Wardruna were first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this album is because the first 3 Wardruna albums were almost like concept albums.
The Ronelyod.
Yeah. So it was just more focusing on the runes and stuff, and each song was representative of a different rune and stuff, which was really cool. And I don't really want to call it a concept album because I think it's a bit of a redundant phrase, because every album is based on a concept of something, So, but
it was like a body of work that was all related.
Yeah. So, and the 4th album, Skald, was more, because that was more minimalist, and it kind of had it was almost like quite bardic, like the way it was just him and it was just an instrument, and there wasn't too much orchestration as there was on the earlier albums.
It's very intimate.
Yeah. Which is why what I really liked about this album was I think they've done a really good job of kind of creating a soundscape that's a lot fuller than their previous albums. It's a lot more kind of soaring and orchestrated, and there's most of the instrumentation is quite present on a lot of the tracks.
There's some incredible instrumentation, and you can tell they've used the real instruments as well.
Yeah.
The horns are so nice.
Oh, there's one track, and it's probably...
I think it's good rather than they used lots of horns. And in the video, they're doing the Burzum thing with the trumpet.
Yeah.
The old... I can't do it without looking at
I watched the video when it came out, but I have to revisit it again.
It's a beautiful video.
I remember thinking the video looked stunning as well.
Yeah.
But there's one track which is called... let's see if I can brutalise this ancient language. Filgutil, which I think translates to accompanying number. But that's got a really good horn section in it, and it's because a lot of the time horns, I think, are associated with like war horns and stuff. Whereas the horn is implemented here in a way that's quite melodic.
Yeah.
And I think it adds to the atmosphere of the track, and it's a very soaring track, and I think it's probably my favourite Wardruna track ever. It's just really dynamic.
Beautiful.
And it's just got, like I said, when you listen to their earlier albums, like the Ronelyod albums, there's you've got some tracks, like one track called Raunir, which is similar to this. It's quite rousing, and there's a lot of elements in it. Because I think one thing Wardruna are really good at as well is their vocal layering.
Yeah.
And creating the soundscape with the vocals as well, and having that accompany the music.
The vocals in this album are really sophisticated.
Yeah, and it's great, and you could tell that they've put so much thought into making sure that it's harmonising well and it sounds...
Harmonies are so interesting.
That it's cool. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I was really... they're really unusual harmonies, and I think Shem would really like them. Our man behind the camera and producer. He likes music that sounds like in a major key that's kind of also mournful, and this is very much what they've done. They've used really the intervals they've used in the harmonies, which are like, some of them are 5-part harmonies. There's so many layers, and like there's like really triumphant layers in there, but then there's also this like sense of sadness and loss at the same time. Yeah. You
basically summarized how I felt about the track, the Field Util track, and that's basically how I would summarize that, just in a far better way than I ever could. But it's just it's more melodic than previous albums. So I felt like there's a lot more minimalist elements in some of the earlier albums, whereas they definitely, I think, went in wanting to create an album that's a bit more rich and dynamic and just has a fuller sound. And it's interesting because this is really, in many ways, their first album, in the sense it's the first album that's not based on either or influenced by a particular concept. I mean, it's still based around the concept, but I think like this is a full representation of the band's sound. Whereas I feel like earlier albums were kind of isolated elements of what they wanted to show the project was about. So I think that's why I think I actually do really like this album. And even the whole lyrical concept I find really interesting, like the White Raven that's talking about, these animals that are kind of like heralds or spirit guides in Nordic mythology. I think there's another track that's called the...
Is Skugga?
It's the Kvit.
That's Kvitravn is White Raven.
That's Raven. There's another one called it's the White Deer.
Oh, the White Deer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know about the White Deer.
And another track I really like on the album is called Visa Viding.
What's that one mean?
Which is, I couldn't find a translation for that.
Huh.
So Google Translate let me down on that one. But it starts with like almost a bit of a Middle Eastern flair. And even the vocals are a bit reminiscent of that sort of style, which I thought was really cool. But then it ends up almost sounding a bit like a sea shanty. Like it's got quite a jolly kind of vibe to it, which I thought was really cool. And just not something I'm really used to hearing in Wardruna's music.
My favourite track was Skugga, which means shadow.
Shadow. Yeah.
And like I watched, it's the only time I've ever appreciated a lyric video, because they show you the language with the English translation. You can see the similarities.
Ah, cool.
And like you can, it's very similar to like Old English poetry, and you can tell like I think he might have taken an Old English poem or something. But he's like he's describing like he sees a shadow, and then he's like questioning the shadow. He's like, why are you here? And then I think it's like there's like a rock. And like the shadow goes to a rock. I might be completely murdering this. I'm so sorry if I am. But then like he keeps asking it to like speak to him, and it doesn't until halfway through the song, like it speaks, and then the whole song changes, and like there's this like wailing as if this rock is like in pain, and the shadow is just like trying to communicate with like the narrator, the narrative, the whatever, the point of view of the song. It's so beautiful. It reminds me of I think Electric Wizard. There's like, and also in Sabbath, there's a song. Was it the song where like they're talking about like the wizard walks by, and then the wizard speaks, and the wizard speaking is a guitar solo, and that's like it sounds like kind of communication, and it's the same thing in this song.
Yeah.
And I really like that. It's really interesting. I think it's a really cool device that people don't use enough, and they do it so beautifully in this.
Yeah. There's one track which, going on to your point you just said, that I thought was super, super cool. It's Shadow, actually.
Oh, is it?
There's one bit, because the pace picks up and the vocals are a bit more frantic.
That's when the rock is speaking.
And at the same time, there's like, it sounds like, I don't know what Nordic instrument it is, but it sounds a bit like the Jew harp.
Yeah.
And that's mirroring the vocal pattern at the back, and that's so cool that the vocals are being harmonised with a harp in the back.
It is really cool.
It just sounded so cool. And what I like about Wardruna is it's so authentic.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no fascist kind of, there's no thing they're trying to push on you. They're not trying to make you agree with them about something. No. They don't have an agenda. They're just legit. They love what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the whole connection with nature and stuff, which I feel like so many of us have lost in, many Western and modern societies. It's just so good to hear a band that's, that's still speaking for a lot of the things that our ancestors, long forgotten ancestors, deemed so important on this planet, which is the gift of Mother Earth and nature itself, and how it's the giver of all life, really.
Yeah, it's interesting that this was like kind of revived in the Romantic era in this country, because there were a lot of poets like Wordsworth, Blake, and Coleridge. They basically like Wordsworth and Coleridge were like, fuck the industrial age, fuck the age of reason, fuck enlightenment, we're gonna go in the countryside. And they were like rich guys, and they just basically like grew and ate their own food, became vegetarians, and all they'd write about was nature and how nature can free you from like the horrors of industrialization. And that was like the first time that this had happened in like literature, for nature to be like the point of like divine in Western literature, which I think we kind of owe it to them almost, that we have bands like, I'm not going to name them this country, but bands like Wardruna, and like, not necessarily that Wardruna read Coleridge or Wordsworth, but it's that like romantic sensibility that kind of went out into Europe, like authors like Goethe probably, you know, who did stuff like that too. So I think it's interesting, like historically, there's people 300 years ago that we kind of owe our music scene to.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. But it makes sense, because I feel like, you know, a lot of I wouldn't call this heavy music per se, because it's heavy, but in a different way. You know, it's emotionally heavy, and you know they've done a great job of making the instruments sound in a way that is appealing to modern ears. Yeah. Because you know there's still some aspects of conventional music and songwriting and structure in the music, you know, but at the same time, you know, it's the authenticity is what shines through. And I have always said to people, if they ever get the chance to catch Wardruna live, it's so worth doing. 100%.
They always do something different. Their performance at Hellfest was incredible.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
There were so many people. People couldn't even fit in the tent. I had to stand like in the field to see them. And that tent that they played is huge. I think it was like the temple or the altar. And basically they knew it was going to be really full, so they did this special setup where they had like all these people with horns and like the whole orchestra behind them with all these incredible weird instruments, but then they had like this huge like backdrop that looked like leaves, and then they lit themselves so you could see the shadows like blown up really big on this huge wall, so even though you couldn't see them, you could see like these weird movements of people playing these like weird looking instruments and like curved horns that are like 2 meters high and stuff like that.
It's so cool. They had a similar setup when I went to see them in Elephant and fucking Castle of all places.
No way!
Yeah, no, I think they were meant to play, what was that venue? The Shepherd's Bush Empire.
Oh yeah.
But it was dilapidated, and I think there was some structural damage, so they moved it to the Coronet in Elephant and Castle, and it was just so weird because I grew up in southeast London, so I know Elephant and Castle well. But to think that I'm going to watch Wardruna while walking through the fucking shithole that is Elephant and Castle.
It is a proper shithole.
It really is.
I mean, I was born in South London, I can slag it off. It's horrible. It's like concrete hell.
And it's becoming the new Canary Wharf now.
I was going to say like cat capital or something.
Yeah, they're turning it into like some next financial district.
Wow.
Knock and kick out all the poor people and move them out so that they can...
Where are they going to go?
No, well, no, that's true.
Yeah.
But so Wardruna...
Wardruna, sorry, take it back.
But no, it was, they had a similar setup. They had, I think, the same thing with like the big backdrop with what looked like leaves and stuff. And, you know, it's just so good because you could tell there was no, as far as I can tell, there was no backing track, and all the music was produced on stage and stuff. And it was a very special set because it was actually... they were touring with Enslaved and doing select few shows because Ina Selvik had collaborated with Ivor Bjornsson on the Skugsia album, which was also about...
Great album.
That's great, I love it.
Yeah.
And that's really a celebration of kind of like Nordic history as well and mythology. And they performed it live, so it was an Enslaved set who are like one of Shem's favourite bands as well. So watch an Enslaved set, then a Wardruna set, and then Wardruna and Enslaved performing Skugsia together. So it was just like, Jesus, like, and then it finished and I walked out and I was in Elephant and Castle, so.
I would not go to a gig in Elephant and Castle, even for Wardruna, I just wouldn't. I'd
it was
get
alright.
murdered immediately afterwards.
It was alright, to be fair, it wasn't too bad.
That's good, I'm glad that you didn't get murdered afterwards.
But this album in particular, I think it's a good addition to to their discography because, like I was saying before, each one of their albums kind of does something different, and they're exploring different kind of soundscapes. And I've said the word soundscapes about 2 million fucking times. But like, you know, the first trilogy were really, you know, kind of like their first almost tentative steps into what they were trying to do. And whereas Skald was very, I would say, you know, like I say, almost bardic, was minimalistic, whereas this album, it's kind of like an amalgamation of everything they have been doing, whether it be live and on record, and saying, okay, this is our, in some ways, in my opinion, I think it's their first complete, like, cohesive, comprehensive release of what their sound actually is.
I think they came into themselves in this
Yeah.
one. I think this is one of those albums where like, oh, okay, they're a band now. I think it usually takes 3 albums for a band to like get to that point, and a few years as well to like go through the lineups and like iron out the kinks and stuff like that. Yeah.
But I was really, really impressed with it. I loved it. It was an easy listen, because I will say one thing: some of the older stuff can be a bit hard to get through, because a lot of it is quite ambient and minimalistic a lot of the time. So I ended up skipping a few tracks because there's not much going on this track. Whereas with this album, even though it had its sort of slower, more ambient moments, there was still enough going on in the back to keep me entertained and listening all the way throughout. And like, so many tracks had different flavours. And just the juxtaposition of the vocal harmonies with all the Nordic instruments going on, they just got the mix just right, you know. Like one wasn't overpowering the other. They're actually all working together to create, you know, one complete sound.
Yeah, I feel like 50 years ago you couldn't make an album that sounded this rich. Like, I don't think the technology was there to like really bring out the acoustic instruments and things like that, and the horns. Like usually orchestral, maybe not from 50 years ago, but from before then, if it wasn't a good recording, which you'd have to have a whole lot of money to do all those layers and then not have everything melt and catch fire and things like that. It would have been crazy to do that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that's what I was trying to say with the modern approach to it. Because like I said, this wouldn't have been possible before.
Yeah.
But the irony is you need the modern technology to be able to capture something like this on record. Like I'm sure they could have done it live 500 years ago or whatever with their instruments. But, you know, to the fact, and I think that helps with the authenticity, because you know that they are using their own Nordic instruments, and, you know, they've found a way of capturing that and presenting it through modern technology.
This is a complete side note and deviation, but I can't remember which tribe it was, but there was a European group like around the time of like the Goths and the Visigoths, and I think they defeated the Romans, but they had these really weird horned instruments that were shaped like horses or like dragons, and they had tongues.
Oh, cool.
And it's like the only like kind of blown instrument with a tongue I think ever made.
Oh, no
and
way.
they looked like beasts, and what they do is like they would just like parade through with these like crazy fucking, I can't remember what they're called. If you maybe type like weird beast horn instrument into Google, maybe you'd get something. But they literally, the tongue would flap and it would create this like horrifying shrieking sound. And you could like, basically when the Romans saw them, they thought they were weird mythical beasts. Because they just, if you see like a whole like 300 people, these weird fucking screaming, shrieking like dragon lizard horns with like flapping tongues at like 2 meters high, like polished to be super shiny in the light, and they're just marching towards you. You just shit yourself.
Yeah, I'd tap out. I'd be like, I'm done.
I'm pretty sure that happened to them a lot, and like they defeated the Romans, like the legion that was there at the time. So that's what Wardruna kind of remind me of when they do that thing with the horns. It's like a war horn thing.
It's got a bit of it. It does sound. It's got that kind of tribalistic, almost war-like sound to it, a lot of the music. The drums, especially, like it's just that deep bass drums that they use as the rhythm section for most of the track. You know, it's very reminiscent of the war drum style sounds, even though it's probably not intended to sound like a war drum. But it's just what it reminds me of. That point you were making, the thing you were talking about with the instruments, with like the flailing tongues and stuff. Have you ever been to the Hornimans Museum?
No, I haven't.
They've got a room that's dedicated to. They've got a whole room full of ancient instruments from loads of different sort of civilizations and places around the world, and it's pretty cool.
That is sick.
And you can even try out some of them. Whether or not, I mean, it's a tricky one because you think these were probably stolen. Yeah, but it is cool to look at, I suppose.
Yeah, it's cool as well. If they're there, you may as well have a look, right?
Yeah.
I'd give this a solid 8.
I'd say that's a fair rating. I'd be inclined to say, I'd say about an 8 as well. Because like I was saying with and even Electric Moon, as much as I do love Wardruna, I do need to be in that mood to listen. I had to listen to this at the right time. And like, you know, I am coming from a school where I like fast-paced music and blast beats generally. That's normally my modus operandi. But at the same time, I feel like I've made a concerted effort in the last sort of 10, 15 years to try and explore other styles of music. And I think that's why Wardruna is such an important act, because I think they've done a good job of, you know, kind of ingratiating people who I think, who would consider themselves to be purely metalheads into exploring other, there's more music out there that isn't, distorted guitars or, double bass drum. And I think they're very important in that regard because, they slot into any metal festival. And I've said for years, I would love if, like, even say at Bloodstock or something, if they'd done like and the noise laws probably wouldn't permit it, but like a late night set where that was like the last act of the night and it's just super chill and it's at night time and they're just playing. I think that would just be super sick.
I think they should play Bloodstock. I think they would actually suit the lineup really well because there's a lot of people who fucking love Vikings that go to Bloodstock.
Yeah. It's true, and just it's just good shit. I mean, they're just festivals. I think just do well. If you just book diverse acts, then I'm sure you're just casting a wider net. I think it's always a good thing to try and book a diverse lineup for that reason. That's why I think I was so looking forward to going Hellfest that year because I'm not being funny. Jesus Christ, it's like almost the lineup was too good to be true.
It was my dream lineup for the Friday. It was like Electric Wizard, Baroness, and Ohm. I just fucking love those bands so much. Yeah. And then I think Coroner were there as well. And there's just System of a Down.
It would be cool to watch System as well.
I've always wanted to watch them live. They're one of my favourite bands. It's one favourite band I've never seen.
I think Wardruna were booked as well.
I think so. Yeah.
But I think everyone was fucking booked. By the looks of it, that lineup was so stacked.
I really hope they're gonna make next year.
Hope so. I mean, I'm no economist. I've never run a festival before. So I don't know practically whether or not it's really plausible for them to even survive past next year. Because
they get state funding, and France.
Some of them do, don't they? Not all.
Hellfest, I think, pretty much do.
Good.
And France is very serious about their arts, and they're not fucky when it comes to alternative stuff. Because they're super into shit like that. And Hellfest, it generates a huge amount of revenue, I think, for the town that it's in as well. It's an amazing festival. So I think hopefully they can do it. They were given permission to do like a 7,000 people seated festival, and they were like, we're not doing that.
Can't do it. It's just not. It just wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work for Hellfest. Like, no one would even fucking listen as well.
No, it's just you can't put on a metal festival and tell people they've got to sit down.
It wouldn't work, especially if they're drunk.
Yeah.
People would immediately start taking liberties with that.
Yeah, so God, we were quite slow on the ball with grants for the music and the arts, weren't we?
We were shit in comparison. Even our furlough was I think in France and Germany they're giving people several years worth, and the funding is not hundreds but tens of times bigger than us.
Yeah. And on that depressing note, but it was. I think to summarise, this was a good week because I felt like I was kind of exploring outside of my comfort zone with a lot of these releases, so kind of forced me to be a bit more cerebral with some of the music, especially because I felt like it was just because I knew how important an album that was to you.
Oh no.
And no, but I think it was a good thing because I was thinking, I want to listen to this properly because I knew if you loved it so much, then it's something worth listening to. And it's just great. I just love the opportunity just to listen to shit that I wouldn't have probably listened to otherwise because it's having the review thing just kind of gives us that incentive to go and check out new music and think about it in a way that I haven't done for a very long time.
I appreciate that you listen to it because it often takes so much energy to listen to a band that you normally wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
And then apply yourself to look at the lyrics and the musicians because I don't normally do that with bands that I like.
Yeah.
So it's cool that we're doing that in that respect. Yeah.
But that's it. I think that's me done.
Smank you for coming. That's a very obscure reference, but yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Feel free to like and subscribe and all that shebang. We will be back hopefully next week with some new albums. If you want us to actually review some albums that you want to suggest, hit us up. We'd love to do that. And have a lovely rest of your evening.
And if you disagree with any of our opinions, feel free to hit us up in the comments. I'd love a debate.
Yes, a debate.
So yeah, take care.